Crystal Wade here with Let's Wade In. So glad you could join us today. We've been talking about your special generation and the costly gifts that you have been given. Our next one ties in when I was growing up. When I was growing up, I would read the Bible and read the things that Jesus did, and I would think to myself, where are the miracles and the healings that Jesus did? Where are the prophets? And we were informed as children growing up in a roundabout way that the last miracle stopped when the last disciples died. So don't expect any more miracles. And that the gifts of the Spirit were not in operation either. And I don't know what the explanation for the no prophets were, but there were no prophets either, as thought by many. And so that was kind of depressing. If Jesus was doing these miracles and these signs and these wonders, and he was a prophet, and there were prophets all throughout the Bible, and they were speaking, and things were changing on this earth. People were being healed, and their lives were changed, and the prophets were speaking, and enemy armies were fleeing away from the word of the prophet. It was amazing. It was amazing the things that were happening in the Bible. And it was kind of depressing because the train of thought was, well, don't expect this to happen now because that doesn't happen anymore. And what had happened was that through time, as people saw things weren't working, they came up with explanations for why they weren't working. And that is a common human thing to do. It's a common human thing to look at something not working and saying, well, all right, well, it's not going to work. But the better thing to do is look at why it's not working and then look for a solution. And so I had those questions as a child, and I'm sure you have questions too as a child, tween, and teen. And so I did not realize myself at that time how costly it is to become a trusted prophet of the Lord. And so this costly gift that has been given to your generation is the freedom of expression of the spiritual gifts. And one of those being the offices of the prophets and apostles and teachers and evangelists and pastors. Those are real offices, and they are in operation, and it is a costly road to get there. And then the other one is the expressions of the gifts of the Spirit, with the healings and the miracles and the gift of knowledge and of wisdom and of different languages and interpretation of languages, and I'm sure I'm missing one or two. But the fact is that the freedom of these gifts and this expression has been given to your generation. It's a costly gift. Let me take you back on a little journey. There was a young boy several years ago, and he was growing up, and as a young boy, he actually had a vision. He actually heard from the Lord the picture of his mother dying. He was staying with his grandmother at the time, and that very day, his mother died in a car wreck. And so he was hearing and picking up messages from the Lord as a small child. And it was costly that he lost his mother. And he grew up, and he was hearing the Father's voice. He was hearing him speak, and every night he would lay in his bed and ask the Father questions, and the Father would answer him every night. And one day he had a question, and he asked his pastor. Now, it is good and right for you or me when we have a question to ask our parents or a trusted adult or a pastor. That's good and right. So he did nothing wrong. But the pastor answered his question that the voice he was hearing was not God, when in fact it was God the Father speaking to him. And so very hurt and confused, he walked away. And that began a journey in his life of going after success, going after business, going after many things, apart from the Father, because he was told by a trusted adult that it was not the Father's voice. And do you know what? He was a prophet. And he was a prophet as a child. And we don't blame the pastor, because the enemy is the one that is at work to shut down the gifts and the offices within us and within the children, tweens, and teens. And it was the enemy that wanted to shut down the gift that was in this young man. And so it was many years that he went through business and he went through different things until he crashed. And the Father broke into his world again and said, yes, it was my voice that you were hearing. He ended up losing his business, and he went on a very difficult journey in his life of hearing the Father and then releasing what he was hearing. And it was difficult in business. It was difficult in the churches. It was just very difficult on him. And in this process, he learned to hear from the Father for himself, to protect that word of the Lord, and when to release it and where and how, even if people were standing against him. And it was a very costly, long time in his life that it took to develop his spiritual gifts and his gift of the office of the prophet. And I'm so thankful that he did. You may recognize him. He is my friend, Kent Simpson, and his website is prophetictabernaclesministry.org. And I am so thankful that he did take that long, costly, hard road to go back to the Father and develop his gift on his own with the Father, because he has released words from the Lord to me. And part of the reason I am talking to you today is because of his long, costly road. And so the road of the process of the prophet is long and costly, as well as the other offices, because the Father is forming us, and he's forming our ability to hear from him and stand on our own without depending on people or places or things. And that's where the true word of the Lord comes. So when we had all of these years of failures, of no miracles and no word of the Lord, it wasn't because those gifts and offices weren't here on the earth. It was because it's a long, costly road to get there. And so no longer do you have to hear, there are no prophets, there's no spiritual gifts, there's no healings and miracles for today. There are. And the Father wants to work these in your life. You have been given them back as a costly gift in your generation, and he wants to work them in your life and through you so that you can impact other people. Okay? So, there's another costly gift coming that has been given to your generation. And stay tuned for that. Remember, go with God and go for the gold.